So this is the technical excerpt from Seeing Beads from the Inside Out. So one of the questions we frequently get is, oh, you light up your beads. They must be hollow. So that's a good question. Are hollow beads better, worse? Do they work better? Well, do they not work at all? And why? So all of the beads that we make, Len and myself at Anglerfish, are actually not hollow. They're just made on regular mandrels, solid glass all the way through. And that's actually the easier approach. Hollow beads can be translucent, but there's a reason why it's easier to start with solid beads. And because I am an astronomer, I see this connection between astronomy principles and how light travels through a bead. So I wanted to show you this little analogy that kind of gets you thinking about how light is moving around in beads. So, the extended astronomical analogy for those who are scientifically minded. So, a solid bead is a lot like the sun in some ways. Imagine staring at the sun. Here we are staring at the sun. Right? And we know in the sun, all of the light actually is being produced at the very center, in the tiny little core in the middle. Just like the LED in the middle of our beads. But we see this big disk of sun. If every light photon that was made at the core of the sun just shot directly out, then we wouldn't see that giant disk. We'd just see the little blue dot. Because these particles of light that went shooting out in the wrong direction never got to us. That's not what's going on in the sun. In fact, as the light tries to work its way out of the sun, it keeps running into things. And when it runs into things, it goes in some other random direction. And so that photon of light does this crazy random walk until finally it pops out at a completely random place on the surface in a completely random direction. So this particular photon of light that started at the core will never get to our eyes. It goes off in a totally different direction. But this one, way out on this edge, actually got redirected toward our eyes. And so when you do that for a whole bunch of different photons, then you see this whole big disk. So that random walk of all the light inside the material of the sun, the redirection makes it so that the sun looks as big as it actually looks. If you imagine instead that the sun was hollow, so there was nothing in the way for most of the trip out of the sun, and just this little shell of places where that photon could run into things, then there would be a little bit of redirection, a little bit of randomization, but still most of the light that went off in directions other than towards our eyes would keep going in approximately that direction and we wouldn't see it. In actual fact, that does happen in astronomy as well as in hollow beads. And this is what it looks like. This is a star just like our sun that got old, blew its outer layers off into space, and so most of that realm in there is empty space. The photons can travel straight without running into anything. And then they get to this little shell, and a few of them get redirected, but not very many. So we see this very faint circle. So that's how hollow beads and solid beads work as well. There's a lot more opportunity to redirect the light as it comes through a solid bead than in that thin shell of hollow bead. So it's not that you can't do it in hollow, but if you want to start with a simple problem, hollow beads are not the simple problem. Alright, that's the end of the astronomy analogy and the hollow bead aside.